It's not often we hear about the involvement of continental African people directly impacting one of the earliest phases of the Black empowerment periods. Despite the disconnect, there always seemed to be a brewing undercurrent in which these two places and peoples desire to connect. Well, today, I wanted to discuss a little-known African princess who answered the call in attempts at unifying the goals of Africans and Afro-Americans. What up, African world? It's Home Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and contributing to this content. On Patreon, you can find more in-depth courses on African history. Also, your support helps the channel grow, improving production quality and future animated projects. And with a word from my sponsors, there's a new social media platform dedicated to educating and uplifting our people. No longer do we have to be censored for speaking our truth. OBT Social is Black owned and operated, and a place where you can post your businesses and even monetize your content. You can visit the website at obtsocial.com. Links to everything in the description box below. I wanted to thank a subscriber for bringing this little known history to my attention. I've never heard of this story and was absolutely blown away upon doing some research. I'm always intrigued with new information on African or Afro-diasporic history, so I really appreciate this subscriber reaching out. That being said, I wanted to properly prime the Afro-descended world for this particular history. I think it's worth mentioning that there are some blind spots with the story, and depending on the source, one may find slight accusatory language concerning the intent or purpose of any party involved. So there are multiple ways of looking at this history, none of which can be conclusively deemed erroneous. In this video, I'll be taking a more conservative approach, and I'll try my best to avoid advancing any presumptive narratives. Let's begin with a quote that introduces the topic well. Laura Adorkor Kofi was a mysterious woman of great charisma who founded the African Universal Church in the 1920s. Like George Alexander Maguire, she provided a religious framework for the Black nationalist ideology of Marcus Mosiah Garvey during her brief ministry. So who is Laura Kofi? Mystery only seems to follow her because of later accusations, but most scholars seem to agree that Laura Adorkor Kofi was indeed a princess from Ghana. Miss Kofi claimed to be the daughter of King Nasipi. After the country of Ghana was formed, like many African nations, the old traditional kingdoms and people were still respected and held some social and political influence, at least on the local levels. Miss Kofi descended from one of these old ruling classes and lived her life accordingly. As a young princess, she was converted to Pentecostalism, and with her newly discovered vigor, she felt compelled to start preaching herself. After her conversion, in 1924, Miss Kofi began hearing voices and having visions. She ignored this experience and began traveling within Africa. One source connects the 3 near-death illnesses she suffered as a result of her ignoring these visions. After surviving her 3 illnesses, she decided to listen to what the visions were trying to tell her and move to the United States. Her call was accompanied by a number of dreams and visions in which she was visited by God, whom she referred to as her old man God. God wished her to come to America. She arrived at the beginning of 1926. Arriving in New York after her journey through Europe and Canada, she was intent on getting African Americans to return to Africa. Kofi was an extraordinarily powerful and captivating orator. She began giving principal addresses at UNIA meetings in Jacksonville, Tampa, St. Petersburg, and Miami areas in 1927. Division reports told of Kofi keeping her audience spellbound for hours and drawing in several hundred new members over a period of a few weeks. A Jacksonville reporter said that the princess speaks every night in the week and twice on Sunday. Previously, in 1926, Princess Kofi assumed a position of leadership in a local UNIA chapter. The UNIA, or Universal Negro Improvement Association, was founded by Marcus Garvey. The next year, she and some fellow Garveyites from Miami visited Marcus Garvey in prison. The speed of her popularity drew some suspicion and undoubtedly some resentment from certain individuals in the organization. Garvey supporters began accusing the princess of being a fraud. When Garveyites suspected that the princess was raising funds to buy ships for a repatriation program that would transport Afro-descended people back to Africa, things immediately became more hostile for her. According to Garvey's supporters, Kofi acted without official authorization to collect funds in the UNIA name for the purchase of a sawmill in Africa and boat fare to that continent. Garvey's supporters suspected that she was taking advantage of Garvey's popularity among blacks to raise money for her own use. As a result, Garvey disassociated himself from her in 1927. His supporters accused Kofi of fraud, claiming her real name was Laura Champion and that she had been born in Athens, Georgia. It would seem as though the mystery surrounding Laura Kofi's origin began here in 1927, or perhaps it was simply vocalized during that time. However, according to one source, it wasn't until later in the 1960s that her account was verified. Ms. Kofi denounced the UNIA and established her own movement under the name African Universal Church. She took the Garveyite ideology and themes. She proclaimed, and I quote, "Go back to yourselves, that's back to Africa, and that is back to God." Her speeches and new organization drew in many former Garvey backers to her cause. The princess had big dreams and hopes for the African American community and Africa. She wanted a commercial tie between Africa and the African diaspora. Unfortunately, on March 8th, 1928, a horrible day for the black community in Miami took place, leaving many in that community nearly despondent. The princess was assassinated. As Kofi was addressing a large and enthusiastic crowd of her followers at Liberty Hall in Miami on March 8, 1928, an assailant forced a pistol through a crack in a door and shot her to death. The enraged crowd who witnessed the assassination beat to death a Garvey loyalist whom they believed to have pulled the trigger. The legacy of the Ghanaian princess lived on as her supporters continued to advance her ideas at the African Universal Church. Since her death, the church developed several programs and established communities such as Adorkaville and Jacksonville. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace.